This meeting will now come to order. The clerk will please call the roll.
Mayor Carlin.
Here.
Vice Mayor Edwards.
Here.
Councilmember Finn.
Here.
Councilmember Binsbacher.
Here.
Councilmember Patena.
Here.
Councilmember Hunt. Here. Councilmember Dunn.
Here.
Good evening and welcome to the Peoria City Council special meeting of March 2nd, 2021. We have two items on our study session agenda this evening, and we are going to begin with a joint presentation regarding interests of the Peoria Police Officers Association, City of Peoria Police Supervisors Association, and the City Council. And I will turn it over to City Manager Jeff Tyne to begin.
Great, thank you, Mayor and Council. And this is an important step as we begin earnestly our discussions with our labor associations and specifically with our police sergeants and our police officers association. So with us today, we do have some special guests to hear from today. Christine Nickel, our Human Resources Director, will begin with a brief presentation and then turn it over to the lead negotiators of our police associations for their statements of interest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tyne, Mayor, members of council. It's a pleasure to be before you this evening. To my left is Dee Dee Gates, lead negotiator and deputy HR director. The purpose of tonight's presentation is to provide you with an overview of the meet and confer process that Mr. Tyne mentioned, also to present the City Council's interests formally and to allow the opportunity for PPOA and COPS to present their interests to you as well. As a reminder, the city has 4 employee association groups. PPOA, which is Peoria Police Officers Association, COPS, City of Peoria Police Supervisors, AFSCME, American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, and PFFA, Peoria Firefighters Association. Tonight we'll mostly be focusing on PPOA and COPS. PPOA represents 161 police officers, and COPS represents 26 police sergeants. Both contracts expire at the end of June 2021. This chart is a visual depicting when the current contracts expire. You'll see that PPOA is in the 3rd of a 3-year contract, COPS in the 4th of a 4-year, AFSCME is currently in the 3rd of a 4-year contract, and you may recall from last year that PFFA is in the 1st year of their 3-year contract. The meet and confer process has been progressing smoothly with the interest submitted to the city clerk's office by the date required by city code, and regular meetings have been occurring with the labor groups and staff negotiators. Once a tentative agreement is reached, labor will take the draft agreement to their membership for ratification, and following that, the MOU will be brought back before council for a vote. As far as bargaining is concerned, there are no federal or state laws that require the City of Peoria to recognize employee associations or to participate in the meet and confer process. Although there are no laws that require, the City of Peoria does have a meet and confer process that was created by the City Council and enacted by City Code. And it covers wages, hours, and working conditions. Throughout the meet and confer process, there are specific roles for the City Council, the City Manager, and the staff negotiators. The City Council provides direction, indicates priorities to the City Manager, and makes decisions on what is important for bargaining outcomes. The City Manager communicates council interests and provides guidance to city staff and the negotiation team based on those interests and council direction. And then the staff negotiating teams explore ways to meet the council and the association interests to the greatest extent possible. As you are aware, the interests of both the City Council and the labor groups are an integral part of the meet and confer process. In our discussions with the City Council, you have indicated that your interests include strong working relationships between the labor and the management groups with the ability to work together towards mutual goals. You've also indicated that transparency with regular communication is important. The city, PPOA, and COPS have great working relationships and are continuing to work together to meet interests. And finally, a multi-year agreement that is competitive and places Peoria in a position that will continue to enable the city to attract and retain top talent. We have heard from the City Council that it is important that the agreement is fiscally prudent and sustainable. And I didn't say it would be brief, or maybe I did, and it was really brief. That concludes my portion of the presentation, and now I will pass the microphone over to Norm Bacon, PPOA.
Mayor Carla and distinguished members of council for giving us the opportunity to address you with our MOU proposal tonight. For those of you that don't know me or maybe don't remember my name, I'm Officer Norm Bacon. I work for Patrol Services of the City of Peoria here at North Station. The rest of my team I'll introduce here in a second, but I was selected by the E-Board to represent the PPOA this year for our meet and confer process. Here's our team. Of course, me, top there. Officer Mike Finney, he's present as well in the audience. He's assigned patrol services in our North Station as well. Detective Justin Fagan could not be here tonight, but he is assigned to our VCU, Vehicular Crimes Unit of our traffic unit. And Detective Richard Kraber, who is with us tonight, he's assigned to our Domestic Violence Unit. So our goals and objectives, just to go over everything in a general sense, is to remain competitive among other police departments in the Valley and state. Recruitment, continue to recruit the best candidates out there. Retain the best candidates. Once we have them, once we send them all this training and get all this knowledge and working with us for a while, we don't want to lose them to somewhere else. So we think it's important to retain them. And then parity among other labor groups in the city, as well as other departments, as far as benefit package, wages, and all the other things that go along with that. Review current contract. We did that just to look at language changes, see if there's things we need to clean up, be more specific with, clarify, because as you go through these contracts, you start finding a little bit of ambiguity in there, and you go, okay, what did we mean by this? What was the intention of this? So every once in a while, we got to review and clean up these things. This is my fourth contract I've helped negotiate with the PPOA. It'll be my last one. Unfortunately, I'll be retired before this one's done, but it's been a great experience this year. But reviewing the current contract, you know, we found a few major little things, or minor little things, no major hiccups. Continue providing superior service to community. Obviously, that's all of our goal, is to continue to provide that service to the citizens of Peoria at a high level. And by doing these other things, we will continue to do that, remain competitive, recruiting and retaining the best employees we have. So the items for discussion, this was a pretty short list this year. We didn't really have a lot to really change, but we did want to, keeping those things in mind that I went over with a previous slide, wages. And wages, we wanted to stay competitive, again, with the Valley agencies that we're competing for with those top-tiered recruits. When folks are looking at police agencies, that's one of the things, or any job for that matter, they look at wages as not the only thing, but that's one of the things they look at. So we wanted to stay in the top 3 to 5 in pay in the Valley and just stay competitive that way. Specialty pay. This is one of the things that we've really never had before in the city of Peoria for our police department. By looking at the comparisons of other agencies around the Valley, we're finding that more and more agencies are paying specialty pay for individuals that have extensive training and experience in areas that are critical for investigative sense and other assignments. We send these folks to a lot of training, and they're basically our brain trust for these certain areas we have in the department. We want to retain them in those positions because those are also the positions that have a lot of call-outs. They're on standby a lot for those types of investigations. They spend a lot of time away from family, and we wanted to somehow get some type of incentive there so they would remain there and we can keep those folks in those specialties. 457, or increased vacation payout, that just allowing more flexibility on folks to cash out some of their accrued vacation leave that they don't necessarily need that year, or maybe, you know, something has changed where they had to cancel vacation plans, like 2020 is a big example. A lot of people have canceled their vacation plans for whatever reason. So this would be another way to cash that out if they didn't get to use it. Where was I at? 457 contributions. So this was something that we felt, again, with the competitive sense of other agencies, that more and more folks were doing this. We do have a RHS small contribution that we already had set up in our contract, but we felt that having another avenue to kind of do some things with 457 a small monetary matching for 57 was important. It also put us in line with other agencies and parity among other labor groups. Sick leave accrual, we wanted to increase the ability to go beyond our maximum number. Currently, we have 1152 as our maximum sick leave that we can accrue. And I can tell you there's numerous folks in the police department, including myself, that's over that max. And we after we hit the max, we get paid out at 50% of the money in April. But we wanted to extend that so we could just keep on carrying that number over. And again, being like other labor groups and other agencies that were allowing that. Because, you know, it's in a sense that we want folks to be here, obviously, if they're not sick. So give them another incentive to keep building up their sick leave. And retention pay, that goes back to what I was discussing earlier with the previous slide. We want to retain the best individual we have. We already have them, let's retain them. We've sent them to training, we've got the experience under their belt. We don't want to lose them to another competitor. So our suggestion is at different increments above the 10-year mark, 15-year mark, and 20-year mark to give that retention pay to those individuals to keep them around even longer. So we have that training experience here. The holiday leave bank, it's something that we've gone over, and we think it's a good plan to be more flexible with our employees or with our members to be able to take our vacation or take those holiday leave hours and use them at other times of the year, because a lot of us work on the holidays because of our schedule and just police in general, we have to work on the holidays. So we have a lot of folks that were working and they wanted to somehow bank those extra hours where right now there was no current way to do it. So this was a plan that we've talked about, and we feel very confident this is going to be a better way of doing business. Bereavement leave, this was mainly a language cleanup among other labor groups and the PAR of the city. So we wanted to just be very clear on what family members and what relationships fell under bereavements. Mainly a language thing here. Leave accruals for comp time increasing. We wanted to increase our comp time a little bit. So again, more flexibility for folks. If they're working extra hours, overtime, maybe they could take it as vacation time later. It's really important for our newer officers because they don't earn a lot of vacation starting off. So one of the ways they can earn time off is working an extra shift and getting comp time, and then with the ability to take it off later. So we wanted that flexibility. And union reps, we wanted to increase our numbers. As we're growing and we're seeing a larger department, we wanted more flexibility to have more reps out there in the field. And by increasing our numbers by a few, that'll give us more flexibility to do that. And that's pretty much a wrap for me. Any questions or anything?
Council, any questions? So where are you in the negotiation process right now?
We're pretty far along. I mean, we've in principle, we've agreed to a lot of items, and we're pretty much ready to wrap up real soon. I would believe that with just a few more little wrinkles to smooth out, I think we would be done.
So when you started these negotiations, did you have a full head of hair?
Well, it turned gray.
It started gray, okay.
But I just want to add, Mayor, that it's been a very pleasant experience this year. Like I said earlier, it's my fourth negotiations. This has by far been the most pleasant. Working with Dee Dee's been a pleasure. There is none of the past problems we've had in the negotiations with any problems at all. So we're very pleased at where we've came in a short amount of time to get to here tonight.
Well, I am very pleased to hear that. We believe that Peoria has the finest police force ever, anywhere, and we fully support you in everything that you do now and everything that you will do. And I know that there has been a lot of difficult cultural innuendos and issues in this last year, and I just want you to know that in the city of Peoria, you have our full 100% unadulterated support now and always will.
We appreciate it, Mayor.
Thank you for what you do.
We really do appreciate that. Thank you.
Good evening. I won't I won't go over all the exact same points as Norm did, because a lot of our interests are the same. But the way we wanted to approach the interests were, with Dee Dee, was a brainstorming session on how collaboratively we can come up with something that benefits the city, benefits the employees, and keeps us that desirable place to come and work. I'm Sergeant Adbaki. I have a unique perspective in that I've come from another agency here because of the relationship that the police department has with the city. And it's been a pleasure of mine for the last 8 years also to negotiate these contracts and to be a part of the meet and confer process, which is really a unique opportunity in the Valley and in the state. So I thank you all for that. I will say that the working relationship we've built with Dee Dee and Christine has been fantastic, and this process is, with us as well, finishing up very quickly and smoothly. It's by far the smoothest negotiations process I've ever been a part of or even heard of. In speaking with other agencies around the, around the country and going to certain trainings, you hear all these stories. And it's so nice to come back here and not have any of those own stories to tell. So really, for us, it's a brainstorming session to be collaborative, come up with the best ideas to, once we get them in the door, hire them, train them. Now we want to promote them. We want them to be leaders in the organization and set the example for new people coming in. And that's our whole goal with our contract, is keeping that momentum going and keeping those officers climbing up the ladder and becoming leaders here. So, thank you.
It sounds like we want all the same things.
Absolutely.
We want to retain our police officers, have them have a great place, not only in Peoria, but throughout the entire valley. And so I'm glad that you're finding success in achieving our mutual goals. Yes. Appreciate everything that you do. Thank you. Council, anyone else? Mr. Tyne?
Mayor, if I may, just real quick, I want to make a quick acknowledgement. I know a little out of the ordinary. First, thank you to our negotiators tonight for very much articulating your interest, and it was very helpful, I think, for all of us to hear, and it's been a really wonderful process, and we appreciate the collegial atmosphere that we've had, and the value-added interest discussions have been just so fruitful. So thank you very much for all of that support. I want to also take a moment to acknowledge the City Council's chief negotiator, Dee Dee Gates, who is retiring after an illustrious public career. So for those that aren't aware, Ms. Gates worked as HR director for the city of St. Cloud, Minnesota for over 25 years before we were fortunate enough to grab her out to warmer weather climates, and has worked with us since 2015, including most lately as our deputy HR director. And of course, Ms. Gates excels at areas such as this, employee and labor relations, but she does that through what you see and hear tonight, and that is the building and leading high-performing teams, building a sense of motivation, working with labor leaders to achieve all that we're seeking in goals. We are all so proud of her and wishing her the best in her next chapter. So thank you for allowing me additional time.
We will miss you. We will miss you. I remember what negotiations used to be like before you came. You all must remember that. The times were not so wonderful. We will certainly miss you. I wish I could say don't go. I really want to say that next. But thank you for the time you've given us. Thank you all. Okay, Mr. Don.
So we can do set for Parks, Recreation, and Facilities.
Parks, Recreation, and
Perhaps
Community Facilities.
If you'd like, I can do an intro.
Yes, please.
So the next presentation is really part of the spring budget discussions that we have. And as you recall, it is very important for us to have enough ample time to be able to discuss some of the key budget issues and operations of our major departments. And tonight we are fortunate enough to have with us Deputy City Manager Eric Strunk, who of course will also be working closely with our Director John Sefton and Deputy Director Chris Calcaterra to give an update on the programs and facilities and the events and conditions that are happening within our Parks, Recreation, and Facilities departments. So with that, I'll pass it to Mr. Strunk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's another opportunity to be before you this evening, and we're thrilled to share a little bit about the Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities Department budget. That's really what this is, but there's stories within that that we'll also share with you that you hear from both Chris and John as we go through it. Just a couple quick notes. It's hard to believe it's been a year since we last visited with you and talked to you about what we hope to accomplish in 2021 and 2020, and here we are. But something happened along the way that caused us to really have to pivot, and really this entire organization, and that's the COVID-19. We're all very familiar with that. So as a result of that, you're going to hear a few stories this evening on how this department kind of met some of the challenges that popped up in the community and how they responded very robustly and very quickly. At the same time we navigated COVID and the impact of that on our community, we also continued to monitor and assess our patronage fees and revenues. We still offer programs, so we still had to run those. We initiated planned park enhancements and projects. Those didn't slow down. We had to keep doing those. We maintained and repaired our 37 different neighborhood parks and our 3 community parks. Last year at this time it was 2, now we have 3. And we did that very successfully through the good work of the staff and dedicated professionals. I think throughout the presentation this evening, you're going to hear a lot of good information, and we are going to pause a few times to collect your thoughts, your observations. And as we go through it, we're going to talk a little bit about the budget, certainly, take you on a virtual tour of some of our photographed highlights. We will also share with you kind of a continuation of the deep dive we've taken into revenues and fees and recreational programming. And then finally, we're going to talk to you a little bit about a few of the key initiatives we see coming up for the next year, FY22. So with that, I'm happy to have John Sefton, our Director of Parks, Recreation, Community Facilities, and Chris Hallett, or Chris Calcaterra, boy, I'm really not doing good now. Chris Calcaterra, our Deputy Director. So with that, I'll turn it over to John, and he'll take us through the presentation.
Well, thank you, Mr. Tyne and Mr. Strunk. Mayor and Council, it's an honor to be here tonight. And to finish up the introductions, obviously we mentioned Chris Calcaterra. Also in the audience with us tonight from the management team, we have Blake Englert, Nathaniel Washburn, Maria's online watching, making sure the digital stuff works. And for a first-time introduction, new to the team, Mr. Mike Elliott. Mike joins our team as a manager, so I'm going to introduce a little more about him in a few. I also want to recognize in the audience tonight, Mr. Jerry Johnson, recently re-elected to chair of the Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities Board. He has been a wonderful addition, very helpful in making sure that we're moving the Volunteer Board and Commission forward. Of course, we want to recognize the Parks and Recreation Community Facilities team in general, everybody for their efforts over the past year and the inspirational work in accomplishing what we do in serving Peoria. Eric covered a lot of the agenda, so I'll just jump right into our department overview. And I do want to recognize as we jump into this, the relationship of the Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities functions to each and every of the council livability goals. There's the obvious with the arts, culture, and recreation. There's the relationship with the arts, culture, and recreation and the healthy neighborhoods and how Parks and Rec inspires and contributes to an amazing Peoria quality of life. Plus, when we consider the other goals, efficient transportation, smart growth, superior public services, economic vitality, and public safety, the resources and the intentions that you allocate to this department help to support, augment, and influence your goals and the community in a robust and often profound way. We believe that Peoria's Parks and Recreation Community Facilities are key assets and functions and that affirm Peoria as a community of distinction. Your and previous council's investments in the people, places, and the programs of our department are directly impacting Peoria's unique and special and signature lifestyle. The exceptionally amenitized parks and facilities are highlights to neighborhoods and destinations for the region. I like to talk every year about our vision. Our vision, enriching the livability of Peoria through a connection to community, places, and programs. And of course, our mission to meet the needs of the citizens of Peoria by developing, implementing, and maintaining quality programs, services, events, and facilities that are cost-effective, creative, and most importantly, responsive to citizen input. All of what we talk about tonight is influenced within the Community Services Master Plan, the graphic that you see here on the left. We have 5 key focus areas in this document. 1, parks, facilities, development, and enhancement. 2, programs and services delivery. 3, partnerships and collaborations. 4, internal department organization and staffing needs. And 5, funding resources, and the topic of tonight's discussion, budget allocations. All of that is wrapped up in this plan. And it was just a few months ago that I was before you noting our being recognized for the second time by the Commission for Accreditation of Parks and Recreation Agencies, CAPRA, their little stamp there on the bottom left, affirming our commitment to the industry's highest and most stringent principles and practices in serving our Peoria. So with our 3 direct service divisions, the Library Services Division, led by Nathaniel Washburn, includes the main library, Sunrise Mountain Library, collections development, programming, and outreach. Community Facilities and Recreation is led by Blake Englert. That includes the Sports Complex, Rio Vista Rec Center, sports and aquatics programs. The Neighborhood and Community Parks, that's Mr. Michael Elliott, newly appointed to the role, includes parks maintenance and projects, parks programs and park rangers, adult sports, facility rentals, trails, right-of-way, and open space. And each of these teams would not be as good as they are without the proficiency and the discipline from Maria Calcaterra's team in the Business Services Division. This group supports all of the PRCF functions in addition to the Neighborhood and Human Services focus on personnel, budget, finance, customer service, and CAPRA accreditation. And of course, right in between all of us is our Deputy Director, Chris Calcaterra. All the deputies get to wear a lot of different hats. Chris has a whole collection of many of the different teams and one from Georgia, the Bulldog hat for sure. But I certainly want to call out his involvement in a lot of different areas, both regionally and locally. And Chris, I appreciate your hard work. So with that, the PRCF Department Operations, Programs, and Facilities are funded through general fund, GEO bonds, a mix of variety of grants, and a robust program of user fees. And as Eric mentioned, this past year has been one of challenge and of opportunity. We're forecasting a strong general fund expenditure savings, and a good portion of which will be prioritized for the department's structure and projects and growth readiness. Now I'll have Chris hit on a few of the trends, conditions, and the highlights.
Thank you, John. I'm going to dive into some trends, conditions, highlights tonight based on the past year, and we all were presented with challenges, as well as, for us, many new opportunities. We wanted to share some of those department service successes with a connection to our community over the past year. It may come as no surprise that staff redeployment was essential to our success for the department and the delivery to our citizens this past year, and it was filled with innovation and very much distinction. In the programs area, 3 distinct themes quickly became apparent. Focus on a return to play. Keyword, focus on the return to play for safe play for all. All traditional programming was modified for safety protocols in order to continue in-person recreational opportunities for our citizens. The rethinking of recreation, augmenting our citizens' services by developing alternative programming. We went to potential virtual online programs, home hangouts. We had e-gaming for all of our users in co-oping across the West Valley. We had really intriguing opportunities across that really, because due to the pandemic and the requirements from the executive orders, we were very innovative from operational and rethinking recreation. We also compiled our team into a renewed resources team. This was a strategic planning effort led by staff to develop and identify department-wide opportunities for efficiencies. With the new frame of reference in mind, we found examples that were essentially right in front of us, but now our thought process was different. A couple of those examples in redeployments were, we had librarians that acted as ambassadors at Paloma Community Park when we opened the park for the first 2 months. We were actually engaging with residents at the park in the open environment, talking about our programs in the library, and we were reaching out into a group of citizen groups that we don't necessarily reach every day. Another one was we redeployed recreation coordinators into our maintenance areas. As you're well aware, most people were outside, so that was a great opportunity for them to really experience that one-on-one with the residents. And we were essentially grassroots marketing for our entire city and our department programs. In our community facilities areas over the past year, those community facility areas are the recreation center, the community parks, the stadium. We managed those facilities because of field use. We still had opportunities for individuals, groups under 10 to come participate through very stringent mitigation efforts and acknowledgement of rental agreements and return to play protocols that we had in place. So with that, the park rangers were essential to that program. They were out in the field, they were managing those rental agreements, they were managing the contacts for those promoters as well. We're very proud of that happening. We're one of the very few, and the amenities we have that we could offer that as an asset. As part of the ongoing review, continuing today, of our facilities, we're focused on the peak use trends, the congregation of folks and people and patrons in our facilities. And we want to make sure we continue to serve safely as we reopen and re-engage. And that may be redefining some of our opportunities that we have in our community facilities. The Recreation Center is one of those. We've continued to support the health and wellness of our community, and its offerings are very varied right now, based on timing, based on room space, based on gymnasium occupancy. And right now, our team is more managing forward as we redeploy and reinvent what we look like. Although, and same with libraries, they have limited services over the past year. But one of the most important things that we did was reach out in the community, and that was felt through some of your approval of CARES Act dollars in the form of purchases of the Wi-Fi pucks and Chromebooks that were introduced into students that were learning virtual learning, and also folks that were looking for reemployment opportunities. Also, technology played a huge role, as we all know, the past year. The library and the patron services developed or worked with IT in a collaborative effort on a third-party vendor, which allows the library to expand its offerings and repository of materials for our citizen patrons. They now have a lot more opportunities to go online and virtually get those materials. And close to near and dear to my heart, we also have the maintenance area that we professionally, the highlights of this area this past year is absolutely commendable. The delivery of service continued uninterrupted. We had staff that were here showing up to work and managing through this pandemic and learning as we were going, and we all grew together. And as you're aware, I mentioned earlier that we pushed everybody outside this past year, and Peoria parks and trails use absolutely soared. To give you just a small glimpse of it, on average, pre-pandemic, we had about 4,000 hits or clicks, if you will, on a trail. Average during the last year, we're about 7,200 clicks on the trail, and our peak use was over 15,000 in April. So our trails were highly used, to say the least. Our neighborhood parks and regional operations also this past year, with the opening of Paloma Park, offered us an opportunity to redeploy and reinvent what we look like. And we developed a base which is secured at the Paloma shop for our areas, more regionally perspective, so we can maintain those areas more efficiently. We also developed and we are currently implementing a new RFP program from last year, and I'll talk about that a little bit further. One of our most proud moments was Paloma Park, obviously this past year, one of many. And part of that was the facilitation of a joint use agreement with the help of the engineering department and Maricopa County Flood Control District, where we accessed now 2,100 acres of passive open space that we are and will be developing in the future. And as I mentioned, we also added 2 new amazing park amenities to the system, and Paloma Park being one of those, and Liberty Park being also another asset to the park system. And just giving you a lot of information last year, so I will pause if you have any comments or questions for us on the last year.
Council, is there anything that you'd like to say at this point? No? Go right ahead.
Perfect. So I'm going to briefly jump into the amenities, the parks we've had. So Paloma Park, I mentioned, 5 months old. It's only 5 months old. When I go back and think about that, it feels like 5 years. No, but it's highly used and amenitized, as you well know. And if you get a chance, please visit as much as you can. It's a great opportunity to be ambassadors for the city. It's our 3rd regional park, and just like Rio and Pioneer, it adds another jewel to our connection to community. It is absolutely unbelievable. And from a regional perspective, we are getting tours from our fellow counterparts in our other districts and coming out to visit Paloma Park. So that's a testament to your steadfastness in making amenities for our citizens in Peoria.
Makes it all worth it, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And we're still learning. The park's new and the patronage patterns of the park and the day-to-day operational needs, and we're also heading into phase 2. So we're looking forward to that as we approach our opportunities for this coming year. Liberty Park is also our newest neighborhood park to the system, and it had its birthday on November 7th. As the newest addition to the park system, this was engineered and built with updated LED multi-purpose field lighting and structured playground shade, which you can see here in the picture. This shade is very similar to an up-and-coming project amenity called an airnasium or outdoor shaded gym. And jumping into Country Meadows Park improvements is an engineering-led and collaborative project with our department, currently under construction as a major neighborhood park restoration. This park project exemplifies some of the city's executed livability targets through principles such as the shade initiative practices with the inclusion of Peoria's first basketball court airnasium structure providing shade year-round. This is an example of the airnasium. It's under construction right now, and we expect this to be a very popular item right across the street from the school that has shaded parking and everything else. So this is going to be an amenity for that neighborhood in a big way.
Chris, can I interrupt you for a second? So this airnasium, is this part of the shade master plan?
It is a piece of the shade master plan, structure shade, if you will.
So it's one of the aspects that will be included in that master plan. So in other words, this might be something that can be carried forward in different aspects throughout the city in the future?
Actually, it's part of our program that's moving forward. We do have a CIP project that's called Airnasiums that we are looking to move this into across the city as council sees fit.
Will there be ceiling fans in these?
That's
I'm probably not the first person who said that,
not a
right?
bad idea.
Country Meadows Park is going to be fabulous, the first park to get that. That's a huge leap forward. So thanks for putting that in.
Thank you.
Love it.
And it was council-led, and we appreciate the shade initiative. That's helped us redirect. Part of Country Meadows as well is the inclusive and accessible playground amenities that you can see here with our adaptive swings. We're also, with the Healthy Neighborhood Initiative and working with Public Works, we're converting LED lighting throughout the park. So we're being more light sensitive for light pollution. And sustainable practice through our turf reduction. 2 years ago, we did a turf reduction, irrigation and turf reduction study. We're now implementing that through council's fit as we go through our sustainable practices for water management. And Sonoran Mountain Ranch.
Chris, what are we replacing the turf with?
The turf becomes more, the turf right now is being reduced from slopes, unusable playing surface areas. So it's going to more of a decomposed granite or a mulch opportunity for landscape beds.
So wherever there's a slope, you're going to remove the
Correct.
grass.
Correct, Mayor.
But you're not going to remove grass completely from our parks.
No, our initiative is to actually create the passive zones of turf in the parks. And actually, our park staff are part of it because, and they know and they see all the activity in parks. So they actually worked with our consultant a few years back and dedicated the passive areas in the park, the highest used, the most usable turf areas in the park.
So it'll just be intelligent turf.
And yes, right tree, right place, right turf, right place
There
is
we go.
how we'd measure that.
All right, thank you.
And Mayor, if I could, real quickly, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, Mr. Powers presented on the Water Services Department and the likelihood of the climate and the Colorado River water aspect. And kudos to Chris and his team and John for kind of seeing that. They actually saw this a few years ago, did the study, and these are small success stories that you'll hear a lot more of as we move down the road. So to your point that we're not going to remove all the turf, we'll get smart about it.
Yeah, for water savings in the future. It's
Yep.
great, thank you.
Thank you. And then Sonoran Mountain Ranch Park improvements also highlight those community livability targets, improvements to playground amenities, shade, fall protection, soft surface walking trails, seat walls that you can see in this picture. These are adjacent to the turf passive areas that are now available, that are more physically available for use. And the soft walking trails actually is a community engagement item that they brought up, that walking on soft trails, walking in is better than walking on asphalt paths. And also, a positive and negative is trail safety. We need to manage the trails in a preservation area. So you can see here we have a bollard system to make sure we don't allow the wrong traffic into our trail system.
And Mayor, Council, excuse, the indulgence here, if you go back, there's one little piece, Chris, that you talked about that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's so thoughtful, and I want you to.
I will highlight that, absolutely. So as you can see in the middle of the picture, we have seat walls that are pretty indicative around the system for available seating. In there, you can see the little cutouts. That is actually ADA seating. So it is the soft trail walk path is actually ADA accessible. So patrons can come from the parking lot, through the trails, get onto the soft trail, walk with their companions, and actually sit next to their companions on their park.
That is really great. I am so happy to hear how far we have jumped ahead with our ADA and accessibility in all of our parks and our playgrounds and all of the things that we are now installing, you know, making sure that we are inclusive in every way. It's really, really big progress. Very pleased about that.
Thank you.
Council, any comments at this point?
All right. And Alta Vista Park improvements are currently under construction and is a great example of utilizing our new landscape RFP I mentioned earlier. As part of the RFP negotiation process, we received design drawings that you can see in the middle here. Prior to this, landscape projects were not typically designed to this degree and improved. So now we have something we can itemize and go out to the contractors and receive dedicated pricing to. Also, in this negotiation, we fixed our pricing for 3 years, which is important in this environment. And we also added additional warranties, so we now have more plant warranties and things that go back to the contractor to hold accountable. These park improvements consist of drainage improvements, turf reductions, smart turf reductions, and landscape plantings, as well as much-needed dog park enhancements, adding a third cell for the ability to rotate during maintenance cycles at the dog parks. Once completed, this park will be the first in our system with substantial mulched landscape beds underneath the mature tree beds, which you see here on the picture on the left. So we are looking to provide, working with CAPE and some of the other opportunities on water conservation. Mulching is an opportunity to do water conservation practices in our parks.
So in regards to the dog park upgrades, are in the future, or is there going to be more shade? Is this part of the shade master plan, the dog parks?
So the picture here, currently we have 4 shade canopies in this park. They were newly added as part of a previous project, but yes, we are definitely looking across our park system, which would include the dog parks and the neighborhood parks as a shade master initiative, to look at hard shade, soft shade, landscape shade, and or even barrier shade, where you put up, shading materials that provide shade to the opposite side of it. So we're working with a couple of design firms to look at how we can implement that in a really positive way. But yes, as part of the overall shade initiative for the parks area.
I'm glad to hear that. I mean, if water is the #1 thing that we need to live in the desert, I think shade's #2, in my opinion.
I understood. All right, we also wanted to share some of the FY22's highest priorities for our departments in community focus moving forward. In our programs area, we are rebuilding and refining our business plans at the program level, which pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, we're looking to come out fast and furious with some new programmatic ideas and looking how we serve our citizens. We're also pursuing private-public partnerships with Peoria businesses communities for rebuilding the consumer confidence, which is important for our programs as we are targeting joint recreational programs with our city facility and assets. That's a huge initiative on our side, and we look forward to a collaboration amongst the city and Economic Development Department as well to reach out to the business community. We're going to complete the ASU partnership study for our department needs assessment. And also in our community facilities, we will update our tournament reservation protocols with promoters, including our newest asset, Paloma Park. Part of that will also be highlighting the tourism impacts that come with the community parks as we come out of the post-pandemic to look at how we can manage those opportunities with the year-round tournaments. We're going to strengthen our partnership relationship with our community partners. As an example, Peoria Unified School District and our intergovernmental agreement and our joint use facility agreement is part of that. And we manage the aquatics area and have a great relationship with those managers at the district office. So look forward to that over the next year. In the maintenance area, we're going to focus on our project management and how we deliver that, on restoration of our projects in our system. We've begun a flash reporting system. Flash is a nice term, but it literally is that. It's a quick look at where we're at on a project based on our current, and post-construction. So that'll help inform everyone about the project delivery. And we're going to continue to build upon the growth and community use of passive active trails through the completion and reported findings of the Northern Area Trails Plan and Guideline Study, which is a big endeavor that we're actually we're in the early stages on, and working with a large team in the city because it's interdepartmental and it's a very collaborative effort with all the different overlays of information we have from the different user groups. So look forward to reporting that to you in the next 6 months. And with that, I will pause for any questions.
So the Northern Area Trails Plan, it includes, you're talking about mountain trails, not like the New River Trail?
It includes, the guidelines include all trails, to your point, but the northern will include the mountain trails and the current open space areas where we are looking to have trails provide through. It also includes some of the open space we're going to be receiving from the development north in the Vistancia area.
And then phase 2 of Paloma will
phase
include
2
more
of
trails and more maintenance. Thanks.
I have a question.
Yes, Councilmember
Thank you,
Patena?
Mayor. John, I'd like to ask you, what's the life cycle of a park before you have to replace and refurbish equipment?
Mayor, Councilman Patena, I'll give you the straightforward answer. It depends. And really, you know, it would be our objective to hit somewhere between 8 and 10 for a refresh along those lines. But every park is used so differently. They have their own characteristics. A lot of it depends upon how it was originally built, from playground structures to the turf installations, the way vegetation grows. There's so many things that are characteristically impacting what a life cycle would mean. You also see those changes, and you're quite familiar with the life cycle of a neighborhood. As neighborhoods age, there's different types of users in those areas, and then you see it all over again another generation later. So we have been very, along those lines, working with you and through the budget process to do our very best to have a cycle of refresh and those dollars to reinvest in the neighborhood parks and the common areas.
Thank you.
Sorry for that.
Is that right?
And I think along those same lines, since we're talking about, budget, the difference between refurbishing and refresh, first of all, is the extent to which that change happens. And I know that you've just said it depends, and 8 to 10 years, is kind of average. But I think we would like to see in our upcoming budgets a little bit of a higher level of change, faster change. I think our citizens are really wanting it more so. And so, I think we need to maybe accelerate a bit. And I'd like to see that move forward in our budget.
Thank you, Mayor. I think to that point, a little bit of a teaser. Next month, we'll be back before you talking about the FY22 budget process, and in that is the CIP. And Ms. Lund, Adina, our engineer, talks through that, so we'll be sure to incorporate those elements as appropriate in that.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Dunn?
I had a gentleman come into my office today, and he was asking me a bunch of questions, and I do know we have some of this because, John, you were kind enough to give me a tour of our latest park. Can you explain how we use reclaimed water in some of our parks, and to what extent we do that? And then, do we use solar in any of them? Or is that cost prohibitive or even effective? I don't know.
Mayor, Councilmember Dunn. So for the use of reclaimed water, it's, again, depends upon where we have access to. So there's only a handful of parks that we have the actual physical infrastructure. And I know Cape's been working diligently on extending that. And the internal working teams that he has are obviously looking at where we have water, being the largest customer of the water department. But using efficiently the water resources is certainly paramount. But where we can use reclaimed, we do.
And then, do we have any solar?
From a solar standpoint, solar technology has come a long way in the past decade. We have, I think our first original park was West Wing, where we were very extensive in our application of solar lighting throughout. We realized then that it was difficult to be in active areas, and because of the dependency on sun to power those areas, that we had some areas that were very difficult to maintain the lighting. That also impacted safety in some circumstances. So we are really focused on, as opposed to solar, right tree, right turf, right place. Solar, right place is the same philosophy, but really definitely focusing on LED, which is an efficient electrical use.
And then, do we have a parks map or menu of all our parks and trails available to the public? And can they just get that online?
Councilmember Dunn, we have an excellent GIS-driven map accessible via phone and via the website, and we continue to enhance that and collect feedback from folks in ways to look through and what are people searching. Very impressed with our Office of Communications and our web team out of Jen Stein's group. They're looking at data frequently on how people are using our maps and our resources, the questions that they ask. You've seen a lot of that information come in through your offices. When we see that, we are very quickly able to adapt in those areas, but definitely something we're building upon, and I would foresee that never really changes. We're always growing and evolving in that area.
Well, I would like to thank you guys, because you showed the pictures of Country Meadows, and I've seen some of the prototypes and the attention to detail, and some of the even down to colors, and I just wanted to really thank you guys for that, because I've talked to a lot of residents, and they're very excited about having that new park or that refresh at Country Meadows. So thank you for the attention to detail. Appreciate it.
Very welcome.
Mayor, if I could real quickly too, just a real quick touch in on your question. So Pioneer Park uses reclaimed water. Roundtree Park uses reclaimed water. We use it on the City Hall campus. It's not formally a park, but Centennial Plaza. And I believe on the agenda later this evening, we've discussed the extension of what we call Purple Pipe to Paloma Park. There'll be other opportunities as we go there. The ultimate build-out goal of that is to allow the distribution of that water throughout the city. So longer term, hopefully, but it does cost money, but we're heading in the right direction. And real quickly, just on the solar power in parks, don't forget we owe you a sustainability action plan, and we intend to bring that before you a little later this spring, early summer, and you'll probably see something in that reflects that value, and we'll have a good conversation on that.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I did want to also thank you for the sustainability magazine that went out. That was very, very well done. And I talked to the directors, and I've been wanting to say that for a long time, just because you guys did it was first class, that magazine that went out to the residents. And so I wanted to thank your team for doing that. I know Kevin Burke back there and his team, and Becky, and there's so many people, the communications group, Jen Stein, they worked really hard on that. And so I just wanted to thank you for that too, because we've gotten a lot of compliments for that. So thank you.
Thank you, and I do want to give due credit to the Water Department, and as you said, Public Works and Office of Communications.
Thank you. I knew I'd forget somebody.
Yeah, that's a great project and very cross-functional, and sustainability isn't one department. Sustainability is across the organization, and something that all of our teams are very attuned to. Thank you.
Well done.
Jump back in?
Jump back in.
Excellent. All right, so you've often heard confirmations and affirmations from our CFO and our city manager on our overall principles of sound financial management, so actually a really good segue. Parks and Rec applies these practices. With the support of the business services team, our programs and facility supervisors review the details of expenditures and revenues on a monthly basis. And in collaboration with budget and the finance department, we maintain a transparent and effective application of the city's valuable resources. Some of the general budget points that I wanted to point out that our department, and certainly the department's not alone in these, but the attraction of applicants and the pay rates for frontline personnel continue to be a challenge and are consistently been difficult. Our super hot and long summers and our short winter cold snaps impact the care and the appearance of our landscape quality and directly influences our utility and operations costs and expenses. And we're seeing a series of demand changes or swings from programs and services that are directly affecting the revenue side of the cost recovery model. And with that, I will bring up the all-famous favorite pyramid as a reminder to you and for the benefit of the viewing public, our community services, recreation fee, and pricing policy. I did ask that the clerk's office remove all the sharp items from your areas as we dive into this type of a detail. We'll keep it pretty light, though. The recreation pricing and fee policy was originally adopted by Mayor and Council in 2012. Today it is still very relevant and provides us a method of evaluation for each of the department's programs and services. At its core, its policy and its nature is an industry-acknowledged best practice. It is comprehensive in the financial set, including all the indirect costs and with a special focus on those controllable direct expenses. Its intent is to be flexible, affording change and evolution, recognizing the myriad of unforeseen impacts that a community or a marketplace may experience. And the basics of this graph show how the investments into the programs and amenities are shared or balanced between the full city investment and the investment of program participant users. It applies the philosophy of a benefits continuum, whereby the program facility costs are shared or covered completely by users who experience that direct or exclusive benefit. Very fast. Any questions or things that we need to jump into on the philosophy of the fee policy there?
Council, are you familiar with this policy, with this fee structure? Okay, so there are some council members who might need a little bit more of an explanation. Did you want to dive into it, or should I say some things? I mean, I just think that maybe a little bit more information would be helpful here.
So and correct me if there's things that you think you sense that you want to bring forward, and we can be more responsive to you along those lines. But the theory is that the larger of the community dollars or the city's dollars go towards those things that benefit wholly the community. So things like our parks, things like our youth programs, things like our libraries are going to be at the bottom side of that community investment, not expecting a fee from all of the users. They may have some element of contribution. Whereas working up that continuum of the benefit to a subsidized or a full recovery or no subsidy to an enterprise standpoint, where the individual will be experiencing something a little bit more. So you might look at a private guitar lesson at Rio Vista Rec Center as a one-on-one interaction. We would expect that that person covers that full cost and not necessarily have a community dollar investment on that piece. Did that help?
Thank you, that does help. And just to further that, we're talking about taxpayer dollars here. So you pay taxes to live in your community, and you want to be able to get some benefit for that. And things such as Little League and those team sports that happen for children is a perfect example of being able to get back some of the benefits of living in your community. But the person who is taking an individual guitar lesson or square dancing or any of those kinds of things, those are very specific and they're very one-on-one, and we don't want all of the taxpayers in the entire city to subsidize that very individualized program. And so that's one of the reasons that I really like this pricing policy. It takes into consideration taxpayer dollars, and it takes into consideration what people are getting and could and should expect to be getting from their public benefit of living in a community. So I am continually a supporter of the pyramid. Even in 2012, when we spent a long time trying to figure out, all of the components of this pyramid. And I think that it still holds water all these years later, many years later. Gosh. So
Many years later.
Many. So this is our pricing structure. This is the fee structure that we use for our Parks and Rec programs. Thank you.
Thank you. So in 2019, a couple years ago, we presented these overall recommendations, still all very appropriate and relevant and in practice today. Yet we can identify a few points where we seek your perspectives on and direction on. With a couple of administrative actions, we can support the overall policy and best align with and adapt to the changing recreation program environments and impacts. I don't have to play Captain Obvious when we realize that today our world has changed completely. On my next slide, I'm going to walk through a few of the program observations. And then finally, based on our discussion tonight, you'll see a future agenda item where we would come in and every year you adopt a fee table that adjusts some of the parks and recreation fees according to those costs. So we did not do that last year by nature of everything that was unfolding. It's been a couple of years before we made we haven't really made major changes to recreation fees, but it's been a couple of years since we've done that. So with that, these are, and I think it's important to recognize that for context, the pricing and fee policy covers the community services programs and activities that are now offered by both the Neighborhood and Human Services and Parks, Rec, and Community Facilities. Of the 18 specific cost center goals in that policy, these are the 8 that are managed by Parks and Recreation. And you'll see here that the 4-year average covers the 2016 through 2019 years. 2017 was actually a pretty good year for revenues and participation, and we broke out FY20. That was 4 months of something that really had an impact. So you can see that spread between the average and then FY20. The NAs and are not applicables, and the special interest classes are due to the lack of programming in those areas. And the zeros in the parks represent that base of the pyramid. That's the community investment, where we do not have a specified goal for that area. And so for a quick line-by-line review, and I think it's important to stress that the recreation programming, we are not requesting any additional general fund support. The balanced budget mandate and our department efforts to plan, manage the facilities of the programs keeps our annual ask for these programs flat. At this point, we recognize our changed world, and with all of the uncertainty of the current fiscal year's continued hit to the programs and participation, we will need additional time before bringing you any substantive policy discussions or considerations. We can tee up some examples of a potential approach to change. For example, aquatics. We can dive right in. The program has done well under a number of contributing factors. We have strong participation. We have the shared maintenance with Peoria Unified School District. We've had great philanthropy and involvement. Our event, like the Polar Plunge, raised $2,000. So all of those really kind of help to contribute. So we might approach raising the cost recovery goal to 50%, recognizing that 4-year average before, and still feel pretty comfortable. And then another example would be Rio Vista Rec Center. This goal was originally set at 70%, but over time we recognized that the costs, personnel, equipment, utilities, and a significant market competition for that type of service have proven a sizable gap between the goal and actual performance, being at about 51%. So we could see recommending an adjustment to 60%. But now, rest assured, Blake and the team, they all continue to monitor closely the centers and all of these programs, where their strengths are, where their opportunities are, and we really have to recognize we need some time before we can get back into the full swing of operations. The current budget plan provides the financial capacity for us to offer the recreation programs as we have in the past, although we know that things are going to look quite different.
Councilmember Hunt?
I don't see the community center here. Is that because their events that are charged are wrapped into youth and adult, or where is it?
Right. So, and I tried that there's the different programs. The community center is in the policy. Community center is now managed by Neighborhood and Human Services. So it's one of those 18. So that's Chris Hallett's team manages that line item.
I knew that, but I hadn't made that connection with this. Okay. Right. I thought maybe they were in youth and adult because that's mostly what they serve as far as what fits in here. So
yeah,
okay.
It's definitely, because there's so much, it's not easy to keep track of, even for us sometimes. So it's good to have the list.
And things change too, as is appropriate to update what you're doing.
And to be specific on that, similar to the parks, is the policy, it is a 0% cost recovery program. So they work through the community center at the 0%, but then some of the programs where there are sizable subsidized dollars. So it's definitely, as I mentioned, we need to have more of a comprehensive look before we bring you anything significant.
And then, John, what about the library? Do we get any return on our investment with the library, with any programs that they have? Or is it in another department? No, it's
That
your
is in our department, right. The library is in our department. However, that is a separate cost center totally. So we are primarily focused on recreation fee and pricing policies. So we do maintain the library at a planned 0% capacity from a recovery standpoint. They offer a lot of programs. They receive their funding sort of differently than what we consider the recreation
Okay.
and leisure types of programming.
Mayor and Council, if I may, for both great questions that you have, for both the community center and the library, we really look at those as true community assets. And as a result, the general taxpayer certainly is putting an investment into that, and all can benefit. Within those specific facilities, you do from time to time utilize those for specific classes, and the fee pyramid still then would come into play for those programmatic elements.
Okay, thanks.
Very welcome.
Councilmember Binsbacher?
Thank you, Mayor. So I just want to make sure I understand this. So the cost recovery goal, the actual goal, starting with aquatics, is the 43%.
Correct.
And if you said this, I'm sorry, I didn't catch it. When was this goal established?
So these, Mayor and Council Member, the specific goals as stated here were listed on the policy from 2012, May of 2012.
Okay. And so the four-year average recovery covers 2016 to 2019.
Correct.
And so then and then of course you did the fiscal year 20 based on those circumstances. And then the column over here, you've got the 50% and 60% in green. This is what you're saying, it's too soon to come up with those goals.
Exactly.
You need more time to figure, okay.
So from a recommendation standpoint, or putting too much, and I think from a conversation, we may spend some time putting a little more detail and definition around these, but as that column would be, this is how we would sort of tee up in going through some of the discussion. What are the justifications for making a change to what's documented in the policy? And that's all that this was intended to reference.
And then one follow-up question, what is the process? How do you go about that? Is that input from staff? How exactly do you come up with that?
Mayor, council members, so great question. As far as coming up with that percentage, back in 2011, there was a cross-functional team that really studied this. So folks from several different departments, and it was presented to mayor and council through a study session and then acted upon. So this is the council policy that was done. So we would see doing very much a similar approach, presenting in study session, and then having an actual action item for you to update the written policy.
Right, so the council policy specifically follows kind of the pyramid concept, which is to try on the continuum to figure out how much public versus private benefit there is. At that time, there was, to give as a guide, specific goals for these broader programs. As time goes on, of course, those programs change and different offerings are there. And so I think that John and his team is really providing you really the latest update, which I really appreciate them doing that. And there's always going to be calibration. In fact, as John had mentioned, the policy actually recognizes market conditions, different changes in social phenomena and like.
I like that word, calibration.
Yeah, and Mayor and Council, as you've discussed, this is a holistic perspective. So there's, before and after school programs, AM, PM. So the intent would be to bring all those together and discuss those as we go through these at the right time.
Good, I look forward to that, and as long as we've got enough data to make
Absolutely.
assessments.
And that's the presentation in a format. Try to be as simple as possible. You got 4 good years as an average, recognizing 20 is what it is, and then 21 is going to be even worse. So we've got all of those things that are in place. So it's been a longer time. So with that, we'll close out. The existing policy provides the flexibility and the parameters for us to be successful. We believe that programmatically we can provide some major opportunities and accountabilities, all benefiting our community and supporting your livability goals. I'll hand it back to Chris to cover a couple of budget points for FY22 and a few department initiatives.
John had mentioned earlier the balanced budget for the department, but that does not mean we're not continuing to grow. As you know, Peoria's parks have a robust set of amenities, including buildings and structures with electrical, lighting, that Councilmember Dunn you mentioned, and plumbing. Historically, the Public Works Department has budgeted the capacity to repair and maintain these assets. As they and we both grow the infrastructure, we've hit a point of collaboration. We're shifting the ongoing responsibilities to our department. It presents efficiencies and again, just good business sense. And I can't stress enough the collaboration with Public Works to really, we've piloted this about 8 months in advance to see if this is something we could really both work within. And Kevin Burke's team and everybody was really super efficient. So we believe this is a great opportunity. You'll see this as a budget ask, this coming budget process, and look forward to looking for efficiencies and seamless repairs in the parks assets. We have an acronym for it. We call it PAST. So it's Parks, Aquatics, Sports Complex, and Trails. So the team got creative, and now we'll have a section of area in our department that will maintain those specific areas of the city. We mentioned earlier, we talked about the trails expansion. We continue to expand that. Our growth and use of those areas is just exponentially growing. And with that, all the CIP projects that engineering and the departments worked on, pre-planning that is coming to fruition. And you'll see these additional requests are really following CIP projects so that they have ongoing costs and FTEs have been planned as part of those operational needs. And with that, you're good. We talked about it. Okay. So the team has gone through some heavy lifting, as you heard tonight, over the past year. And as you can see from these marks in front of you, we are continuing to provide opportunities and services to our residents and citizens. Youth sports has begun practicing games on Saturdays. Aquatics registration is ramping up. Rio Vista Rec Center continues to offer the facility access and has recently begun surveying members on their interest in small group fitness, testing the waters. Libraries continue to rock with services for all voracious readers through e-reader, iCloud Library, and in-person support. And personally, I'm relieved that spring training is actually underway. So, and to this council's credit, spring training is a special experience this year, given the unique supply and demand situation for tickets. Managing our resident rewards program that you heard about 5 years ago is a very important priority for all of us. And I can't thank you enough for participating in that recognition of our residents. The resident rewards program is only Peoria residents are eligible to purchase tickets at a minimum discount of 25% to spring training games at the sports complex. Over the last 3 seasons, an approximate average of 200 residents have participated per game, so 6,000 residents over the month. This year is a little different with the scarcity of tickets, but we have programmed a hold, if you will, for those residents that we will release day of game. So they have an opportunity to come to the ballpark and purchase tickets all the way up until the day of the morning of the game. So it's a great opportunity to have an asset like this in the city, and it's fantastic we can offer this to our residents as a program with our team partners, the mayors and Padres. And again, a grateful thank you to this council's leadership and commitment to the Cactus League Association. We are off to a good start in hosting the 2021 season. It will definitely it will go in the books as one of the most unique years ever in baseball. So with that, I will ask or pause for any questions relative to our next year's initiatives.
Council, questions or comments?
I've got 2 more slides, and then we'll be done. As we build the initiative and apply the fiscal and personnel resources to the Parks, Rec, and Community Facilities Department as we serve the community, we employ a number of strategies. Balancing our new growth with care and stewardship of the existing and the aging facilities. We're actively engaged with short-term and long-term planning of the community's facilities, recreation, parks, open space trails, all to be a community of distinction. And I thank you for our time, spending a little bit of time on the fee policy, keeping that on the radar. We continue to develop, engage, and leverage the work of our community volunteers across the department, including our boards and commissions. And we work with the city leadership and talents of our other city departments, and I want to stress that, talents of the other city departments. We're absolutely fabulously in a great position to have such an amazing team, from our EMS to our public safety to our financial gurus and our human resources department you guys had before. Truly supportive and a great working environment. All of that to help build and take care of Peoria's needs and growth citywide. All of those are specifically in line with your goals, council policies, and the Community Services Master Plan. And with that, oh. Lost the slide. I lost
Did
my
it
good
say
slide.
questions?
It went black. And with that, are we on the right path? Somehow that disappeared.
So that's the question at hand. Are you on the right path?
Are we on the right path? And I had beautiful pictures of our pathways. I have to
Oh, it would have been
imagine them.
such a nice slide.
It was such a nice slide. Technology can bite.
Council, are they on the right path? We're getting a lot of nods there. I believe that you are on the right path, absolutely. And it is very difficult to maintain areas that need refreshed and refurbished and constantly watching out for how to keep them upgraded and make sure that they have the most modern equipment and shade, while we also incorporate the budget and infrastructure and all the necessities to handle the growth that is happening and the growth that will happen in the future. So, you know, I know that that's no small feat. It's a lot of things to do, you know, just the shape of our city and the geography of it is a challenge. But you have always met that challenge in a really positive and beautiful way. And we appreciate all the work that you've done and know that you're going to continue to do great work in the future. So thanks for everything that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Tyne?
Great, thank you. Just in summary, so that does conclude our presentations for tonight. Very much appreciate. This is the perfect kind of policy direction that we are looking for. Is obviously significant investment has occurred and significant reinvestment is still needed. And also all of the challenges to maintain this at the standard that you all expect, and we're up to that challenge. So thank you very much for that. More to come as Mr. Strunk had mentioned in the CIP process, where we will hope to illustrate some of your interest in that area. And we'll continue. Thank you very much for the feedback with regard to a focus on environmental and sustainability control measures wherever the opportunity presents itself, and of course a deeper dive in such things as our fee policy. So thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. All right, then. There being no further business, we are adjourned until our 6 p.m. meeting.
The Mayor and City Council welcome you to the Peoria City Council meeting. As a courtesy to others, please silence all phones. If you would like to address an issue that is on the agenda, or if you would like to speak to the council regarding a non-agenda item, please complete a speaker request form, which can be found in the front lobby of the Peoria City Council chambers or in the tray to the left of the speaker's podium. Please place the completed speaker request form in the second tray to the left of the speaker's podium labeled Request to Speak. All speakers will have 3 minutes to complete their comments. A countdown clock is easily visible on the left side of the wall behind the City Council dais. Only items listed on the agenda may be addressed by the council. Since items presented as part of a speaker's request have not been listed on the agenda, and due to the requirements of open meeting laws, the council will be unable to respond to items presented as part of the speaker's request. However, please be aware that your comments will be noted. The speaker's name will be called to speak at the appropriate time, in the order that the forms were received. Thank you for your interest and participation in the Peoria City Council meeting.
City Council meeting will now come to order. Please rise for a moment of quiet reflection and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Council Member Hunt.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk will please call the roll.
Mayor Carlin.
Here.
Vice Mayor Edwards.
Here.
Councilmember Finn.
Here.
Councilmember Binsbacher.
Here.
Councilmember Patana.
Here.
Councilmember Hunt.
Here.
Councilmember Dunn.
Here.
Council Liaison Tawari.
Here.
And Council Liaison Van Winkle.
Here.
Welcome to the Peoria City Council meeting of March 2nd, 2021. We continue measures to ensure the health and safety of our residents while assuring that the actions of your City Council remain transparent. This plexiglass is one of the many changes that have been put in place amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Within the council chambers, masks are required and capacity is limited. The barriers you see between us allows us to conduct council business without a mask while controlling the possibility of transmission. For additional in-person and remote viewing and speaking measures, please consult the City of Peoria website. And we will begin this evening's agenda with a presentation. The first item is a presentation, and for this I will turn it over to Councilmember Finn, the chair of the Council Subcommittee for Boards and Commissions.
Thank you, Mayor. If you'd all please turn your attention to the screen for a short video.
We have 21 different boards and commissions, ranging from arts and culture to economic development to planning and zoning. They're made up of residents and business leaders who bring a wealth of personal and professional experience and who generously volunteer their time, energy, and wisdom to our community. These members meet on a regular basis, deliberating and collaborating on various projects and issues of importance for the benefit of all Peoria residents. In the past few years, they have had a direct role in influencing meaningful projects like the Veterans Memorial expansion, multiple public art installations, accessible park amenities, and our Youth Advisory Board even collaborated with the State Attorney General's office to team up in the fight against tobacco sales to minors. As we welcome new volunteers into this exceptional group of people, I want you to know how much we appreciate your willingness to share your time and expertise with our city. On behalf of the City of Peoria and the Peoria City Council, I want to express our gratitude and appreciation. Your service makes a difference. It's an honor to have you working alongside us as we shape our finest future.
As the mayor mentioned earlier, we have made some modifications to enable social distancing, and we have modified our tradition of personally recognizing new board and commission members at a council meeting. Instead, new members are invited to send a picture of themselves holding their certificate so we can recognize them and celebrate their service to the city. The following newly appointed board and commission members have accepted their certificate of appointment and have sent a photo. First up is Brad Schaefer with the Planning and Zoning Commission. There's Brad. Give Brad a round of applause. Thank you, Brad. And next is Josephine Waitman, also with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and let's give her a round of applause. Congratulations and welcome to our new board and commission members.
Thank you, Councilmember Finn. And we will now move on to the consent agenda. All items listed on consent agenda are considered to be routine or have been previously reviewed by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion unless a council member requests an item to be removed and considered in the normal sequence on the agenda. Members of the public have been given the opportunity to submit comments and questions through a variety of electronic methods, and I have received no speaker request forms. Council, are there any items to be removed from consent? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. And the consent agenda passes unanimously. We will now move on to our regular agenda and new business. Item 11R is Code Amendment Chapter 21, Zoning, Recreational Marijuana. And I will turn it over to Mr. Tyne to begin.
Thank you, Mayor. And as a follow-up to our January 21st study session, we have Chris Hawkes, our Planning and Community Development Director, who will present a code amendment for your consideration pertaining to land use regulations related to marijuana establishments. So thank you, Mr. Hawkes.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Tyne, and good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm pleased to bring you final amendments to the zoning code pertaining to the passage of Prop 207, which was termed the Smart and Safe Arizona Act, or probably as we all better know it as, recreational marijuana. This was passed by Arizona voters on November 3rd at the general election. We became one of 15 states nationally that have a recreational marijuana law, and one of 34 states nationally with a medical marijuana law in place. The good news is that as we approach this, this endeavor is that we had a very good sound footing when we established the medical marijuana ordinance about a decade ago. So therefore our zoning ordinance remains, the structure remains largely in place. We made some targeted changes, and I will highlight some of those tonight. Okay, with the passage of the Prop 207 in November, we embarked on a process. We've had several discussions, some with the council here. We started with our first study session November 10th. We talked specifically about use and possession, and later that evening passed an ordinance that clarified use and possession of recreational marijuana, particularly on city property as it pertained to some definitions. We then had a study session with council on January 5th, and we talked specifically about land use and zoning. We talked about some of the provisions in the proposition and how it applies to different types of facilities. One of the at the council direction was to bring back an ordinance the following meeting, and that was to specifically prohibit marijuana establishments unless they were provided for within a dual facility, meaning you have a medical marijuana side of the house and you have a for-profit recreational side of the house. We then had a study session with our Planning and Zoning Commission and to consider the overall amendment package. And then we had a meeting with the Planning and Zoning Commission on February 18th, and at that meeting they recommended approval of the code amendment that I'll highlight for you tonight. So just very quickly, some of these slides might look a little familiar to you, but maybe for the general public that might be watching, again, it was approved by the voters at the November 3rd election. It legalizes the sale, possession, and use of recreational marijuana to adults over the age of 21. It also authorizes adults that over 21 that you can grow and possess limited amounts of marijuana for general use. If you grow it at home, it has to be in a lockable, enclosed area that's out of public view. The law also prohibits the use of marijuana in what they term a public place or an open space. These are definitions that are in the state statute that align with the Smoke-Free Arizona Act. And public places are things like hotels, restaurants, but anywhere where the general public is invited to attend. And open space are those things like that you would expect, like parks and preserves and sidewalks and things like that. That all falls within that definition. It also places a 16% tax on recreational marijuana sales, and this is all in addition to the local sales tax that's provided. And I think as I've highlighted in past meetings, Those proceeds are all put in a Smart and Safe Arizona fund, and that's allocated to certain different fund areas within that, like local governments, the Attorney General's office, and there's those different funds that are established there. One of the new things is that the state statute now requires the testing of marijuana and marijuana products. This was not, even though we've had a medical marijuana law in place for about a decade, the state statute did not require this. So they now require the testing. The testing is to determine any unsafe levels of contamination and make sure and confirm the potency of the marijuana to be sold. Like other aspects of the marijuana law, testing facilities and their employees, they're also to be licensed and are regulated through the Arizona Department of Health Services. That's the state agency that's responsible for that. The siting is subject to local zoning regulations, and we'll talk to you a little bit about that tonight. And as I've indicated in the past, even without a requirement for marijuana testing, we do have two facilities in the valley. Both are in what I would describe as industrial locations, one in the Scottsdale Air Park and one a little north of downtown in those types of areas. The Arizona Department of Health Services, they're responsible for regulating the licensing and also the administration of the facilities and all their agents. The Proposition 207 provided for a timeline that they had to adopt new rules for. They quickly put out rules after it was certified, and they've adopted new rules as of January 15th, 2021. They've also were required to begin accepting early applications, and these were from existing medical marijuana establishments that were in good standing. That application process started January 19th, and it's going to continue through next week, through March 9th. Thereafter, they can accept applications from other qualified applicants randomly. Part of the proposition also has this idea about social equity applicants. And so these, whereas the law does not specify how you select social equity applicants, and looking at other states with similar language and a similar law, these are particularly applicants that are typically from lower income communities, or they might be from areas that have a demonstrated higher ratio of marijuana arrests and convictions. I will note that although the ADHS has adopted new rules for recreational marijuana, they haven't adopted the social equity rules yet, and so those will have to be in place by June 1st of this year. So when they adopt those rules, and even though 26 of those licenses have to be reserved for social equity applicants, any applicant that comes into our community will still have to meet our zoning rules that we have in place in terms of placement, so that still applies. Social equity only directs where the applicant is from or how they're selected for those 26 licenses. And then the last aspect is home delivery. The proposition prohibits home delivery until no sooner than 2023. And 2023, that's the soonest that the ADHS can start developing rules for home delivery, and no later than 2025. It's really a moot point in Peoria in that we currently have a prohibition on home delivery sales of marijuana, so it couldn't occur under today's rules. Proposition 207 also recognizes and preserves local zoning authority. As you can see on the screen, and as we've talked about in the past, there are a number of things that we can do as a local zoning authority. We can determine and relegate where different types of marijuana establishments can go within our city. Whether they're in a commercial zone or industrial zone, we can limit the number of these establishments. We can outright prohibit them unless we already allow medical marijuana establishments, which we do. We can also regulate what's called the time, place, and manner. And in our existing ordinance, we certainly do regulate a number of operational aspects of their business. We can also restrict the types of signage, the types of messages on the signs, and we can, as I mentioned in the last slide, restrict home delivery of marijuana. There's also a corresponding side of things local zoning authority cannot do, and maybe on this one I'll have you focus on the last bullet point, and that's in bold. And what it says, and what's particularly relevant in our community, is we cannot restrict dual licensee from operating a nonprofit medical marijuana side and a retail marijuana facility at a shared location. So that's something the state statute says we have to be able to offer. Just quickly about our current ordinance, I mentioned earlier that I think we have a very good structure in place, and so we're going to be proposing some targeted changes and some housekeeping updates. Right now, medical marijuana dispensaries are relegated to certain commercial zoning districts, and the reason for that was that commercial zoning districts have a higher visibility. They're usually on heavily traveled arterials, and so the idea was that with a cash-based business, it was better to be in those types of environments for public safety. We also have separation requirements in place, so you can see on the screen they have to be a certain distance from certain types of facilities, and as a result, we have a handful of qualifying sites citywide. We require a security plan that's approved by the police department. That includes everything from cameras, to having a posted guard during business hours, to retain the footage from the cameras for a certain amount of time. Locked counters, there's restriction on the operating hours, signage, how residue is disposed of, and also outdoor seating and drive-through services. So it's quite a bit of limitations on the operation of these facilities. Similar vein for marijuana cultivation facilities, we've relegated these to certain industrial zoning districts. All the bullet points that you see on the screen are the same type of limitations that we have for dispensaries, and I'll note we don't currently have any facilities in the city of Peoria, but if we did, they would be required to get a conditional use and meet all those requirements within industrial zoning districts. So on I think it was the second slide, I provided a timeline, and we received some policy direction from the council when we brought it to you I think on January 19th at a study session. And the policy direction we received was that we prohibit marijuana establishments in the city overall, and that we allow them when they are performed as a dual licensee. So there's a dual licensee exception. So where we have existing or new medical marijuana facilities, we would only allow a recreational side of it if it's in conjunction with a medical marijuana dispensary. And then the other direction that we received was in relation to marijuana testing facilities, and the direction we received that relegated to with a conditional use permit in business park and industrial zoning districts, subject to the same operational limitations that we have for cultivation facilities. So in a minute, I'll show you the highlights of it, but we would treat it similar that we treat laboratories. Laboratories are allowed in industrial zoning districts today. This would have some additional limitations, however. All right, so I'm going to talk about some of the highlights, and the ordinance is provided in your packet and with the changes outlined in Exhibit A here. We added some new definitions. You can see several new terms on the screen here. All of these definitions were taken from state statute, completely as they're written, with the exception of qualifying marijuana dispensaries. That's a new definition that we've identified. And that definition, what that does is it blends some of the language from the definition of a medical marijuana facility and also with a marijuana establishment. We've blended those to really comply with the direction we received by council at the January 19th study session. So that new term then recognizes that policy direction and recognizes that this type of facility has a nonprofit side and a recreational side of it.
Chris,
Yes.
before you move on from these definitions, I see that you didn't include social equity and the definition that we've added for that term here. Is that because we're still trying to figure out what that is?
Mayor, council members, the notion of a social equity applicant is something that the state will use and reserve for 26 of those licenses. So if a certain applicant, a social equity applicant, gets a license, they're going to want to establish a dispensary in the city. So they would still have to they would have to partner with a medical side of it or join a existing medical marijuana dispensary that doesn't have a recreational side of it. So I guess the answer to your question is the state identifies who those social equity applicants are. We regulate the use of land in the city.
And how is the state defining social equity? How will they give those licenses? I mean, you gave a definition at the beginning of this presentation, and I'm wondering if that is now the definitive answer, or, I know at the beginning of this it was very vague. What are these 26 licenses?
Mayor, council members, great question, and that was one of the things when the proposition came out is that it doesn't
doesn't really provide any guidance as to who the social equity applicants are or would be. And so through our research of other states that have a social equity component, these were the things that were coming out, the types of attributes that they were looking at to identify these social equity applicants. And this is what I expect Arizona to come up with. The fact is they haven't identified that today. They're working on those rules. They have to have them in place by June 1st.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yep. The next component of the zoning amendment is the marijuana testing facility. I mentioned there's 2 currently in the valley in more industrial backlot locations. When we looked at it, we thought the most analogous or the similar use was a research laboratory that we permit in industrial zoning districts. So with council direction, we've identified that they would be permitted with a conditional use permit in these business park and industrial zoning districts. And then the second part of our land use matrix is we've reformulated the use listing for qualifying marijuana dispensary. So this is a dispensary that's either a medical marijuana provider or one that has a medical marijuana and a recreational side of it. And so basically we've just retooled the use listing and retooled the definition, but there's no change to the operational limitations or the separation requirements for that. In regards to operational limitations, there's no change to any of the separation requirements or the limitations that we have in place. There's new language that just recognizes that a marijuana establishment is a dual licensee, as we've talked about. And then the third bullet point is a substantive change, and this is new language that we've inserted that recognizes that PADs, planned area developments, and PCDs are distinct zoning districts. So what do I mean by this? As you know, we have a number of PADs and PCDs throughout the city, and these are customized, tailored zoning districts. And so when West Wing would be one of them, Vistancy might be another one of them. And so when you look at the use allowances in these PADs or PCDs, oftentimes what they'll do is they'll point to a certain zoning district. So you might have one that points to any allowable use within the C4 zoning district. So what we're trying to do here is say, look, the PADs and PCDs, these are distinct and separate zoning districts. So regardless of whether it points to a C2 district or a C4 district, it's not that district. So if there was to be a, in the future, if somebody was to come forward and want to insert a marijuana dispensary as a use within a PAD or PCD, and they found a location that meets all the separation requirements, they would have to go through a land use change, which is a amendment to the zoning, amendment rather to that PAD or PCD, and come through the public hearing process to identifying that qualifying location. So we're just making the point here, it's really more of a clarification that when we talk about qualifying sites, they have to be C2, C4, C5 districts that meet the separation requirements, and that they're different and distinct from PADs or PCDs. All right. And then with qualifying marijuana dispensaries, again, dual licensee dispensary at a shared location. Again, no changes to the operating limitations. There are changes to the operating, the hours of operation. So currently, they're allowed to operate from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. The proposed change is 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. So why the change? This is to align with the Department of Health Services administrative rules. As they grant these licenses, they do enable these dispensaries to be open during those timeframes. So we're just aligning with the state rules on that. And then finally, marijuana cultivation, manufacturing, and testing facilities. There are no changes to the operating limitations. We just added the marijuana testing facilities to the use listing there. This went to the Planning and Zoning Commission. We advertised a notice of hearing through the Peoria Times pursuant to our requirements. We had a public hearing on February 18th. We didn't have any speakers present in opposition or support. And after deliberation, the commission voted to recommend approval to the City Council. So the key findings is that a recognition that we've got a really good regulatory structure in place that does facilitate reasonable access to marijuana establishments in qualifying locations, but also protects the public health, welfare, and safety. These amendments provide for additional clarity, and we believe they're responsive to Prop 207 through targeted changes to the existing regulatory structure. And with that, Mayor and Council, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Councilor, are there any questions for Chris? I think we've done extensive research on Prop 207 and the limited amount of things in which, we have the ability to customize or change for our city. I think we've taken into consideration all of that. So thanks for all of your work on that. And so, I think we've come up with a good plan for the city of Peoria.
Great.
Council, do I have a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. And 11R passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. 12R is intergovernmental agreement, State of Arizona Stadium Trail Phase 1, 83rd Avenue to 73rd Avenue. Mr. Tyne.
Great, thank you, Mayor and Council. At our earlier study session, we had the good fortune to discuss our various trail systems and specifically to kind of elaborate on the council goal of recreational enrichment and using these trail enhancements. We have Adina Lund, our development and engineering director, who will present a proposed intergovernmental agreement for your consideration to construct a new multi-use trail along Skunk Creek, connecting pedestrians and cyclists to the P83 area and the sports complex. So with that, I'll pass it to Ms. Lund.
Thank you, Mr. Tyne. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Nothing is more exciting than talking about active transportation funded with federal dollars. It's a win in two different regards. So while I'm here to talk about the agreement, it's much more exciting if I talk about the project that leads us to the agreement. So let's start with the scope of work. We prepared a very detailed graphic. This project is actually a two-phase project, and we're talking about the first phase of the project. We are going to expand the trail system on the north side of Skunk Creek, which starts at 73rd, and it connects to an existing trail and goes to 75th Avenue. Then it's going to continue from 75th Avenue, and there's a temporary section that you'll see in red, and will be a permanent location once that developer comes in. We're just going to do a temporary connection because they will probably have to move it to fit with their development. Then we'll continue from 77th to 83rd. So that's all the blue line on the north side of Skunk Creek that will lead to the stadium. There's orange connections that are shown, and those are future possible connections. We want to plan those in the future as we work with developers and we work with other departments in the locations that make sense. We're trying to maximize the federal dollars towards that main trail. We also are showing the Phase 2 project, which is the green line, and that connects across the Skunk Creek Little Finger that feeds into the main Skunk Creek, and it adds a connection to the AC/DC path that's on the other side of 75th Avenue. So we have also secured federal funding for that portion that's available in fiscal year 23. So that's a separate project, and we'll keep you posted on that progress. We're also showing the standard trail that we strive for, which is a 12-foot path with a 4-foot soft shoulder. There could be places where there's constraints that we have to narrow that down, but that's always the goal in working with our Parks and Rec department. We want to provide the best alternative for the users. The existing conditions, you can see the Bella Vista Apartments, which are at 77th and Paradise, constructed a trail that we will be working with them to utilize. And the new apartments, Paradise at P83, which are at 75th and Paradise, they also are finishing the construction, so it doesn't look entirely done. They've got some work to do, but we will also be utilizing that section of trail. And then if you look at the picture on the right, that is what it looks like right now on all the properties that are owned by Flood Control in Peoria. So it's just native dirt waiting for us to build a lovely multi-use path. So let's get into the meat of the IGA. Once we have federal funds, we are not certified to administer the project. So it needs to be certified and administered through Arizona Department of Transportation. So with this, they take on the responsibility to manage the project through design and construction. They take on the responsibility of working with the FHWA to do all the funding, to do all the solicitations. We review the plans, we are there through the inspection process, and at the end of the project, it comes into our inventory for maintenance. The project schedule. This really started in 2016. We received funding from Maricopa Association of Governments to do a project assessment, which gets us to about the 15% design. That enabled us to apply for these federal funds because we had a plan in place. So in 2018, they gave us the $1.5 million towards this project. And once again, even in 2018, they're still funding for fiscal year 22. So that's why we need to do advanced planning. So right now, we have the city funds that we're using for design. So once we finalize this IGA, then ADOT will get it through their process, and they'll begin the design process with us on board to assist. The federal funds are available in fiscal year 22, which is October of this year. And so as we complete the design in the spring, then ADOT will be able to go out and secure construction and a contractor by next summer, finishing this first phase of the trail in spring of 23, which means we can start on the next section right after that. Progress is always one right after the other, keep things moving. I don't know if you have any questions for what I've presented.
No, we have no questions.
All right, we're asking you to approve the IGA with the state of Arizona for them to, for the design, right-of-way acquisition, construction, and construction management for a new multi-use trail called Stadium Trail Phase 1 from 83rd Avenue to 73rd Avenue.
Thank you. Council comments? So just to be clear, this is all funded from money that is not our taxpayers to build a trail that will be used by all of our taxpayers, all of our city residents, benefiting all for free.
It's not entirely for free because we do have a share to pay. Federal money always comes with matching funds.
Ah, okay.
But it does pay for a substantial portion.
Okay.
And whenever there is an opportunity to go back for additional closeout funding through MAG, we always take those opportunities to ask even for more funding as the project goes, because that's what we're always looking for, is that additional to reduce our amount.
And it was the advanced planning that really allowed us to be eligible for this at all?
Yes, the committees are always impressed when we can actually point to a plan that we have developed, and it's something that went to the public. It's something that involved the flood control district and other agencies, so they can show that our partnership with other people and that we've really thought this through.
And obviously we have. It's going to be a great asset. Thank you. Council, do I have a motion?
No motion.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. And item 12R passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, we will move on to 13R, which is contract amendment, GHD Inc., Reclaimed Water Master Plan Implementation, Project 1. Mr. Tyne?
Great, thank you, Inez. We refer to reclaimed water. That is treated wastewater that can be reused for a variety of different applications. And we've had extensive discussions, of course, as a council, that is, where possible, asked staff to look at opportunities to expand Peoria's reclaimed water system in the city. And this, of course, helps with reducing our environmental impact, conserving our important potable water supplies. And to that end, Ms. Lund is going to present a recommendation for a contract amendment for your consideration in this area.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tyne. Mayor and council, well, it's not quite as much fun to actually play with water. It is far more important to our community to make sure we have a robust water system. So this is the serious matter of expanding our water system for our future, which we all care deeply about. Once again, while it's a contract amendment, it's much more interesting to talk about the overall subject and to share some pictures. As you have heard before from Mr. Powers, the Reclaimed Water Master Plan implementation is 3 separate projects. So the purple project, which is Project 1, is what I will be talking about tonight. And that is building the 24-inch transmission main that will take it to North Peoria and Paloma Park. Project 2 expansion will be constructed from Lake Pleasant Parkway along the Lone Mountain Corridor to Vistancia. And that project is slated for fiscal year 24 to connect those systems. And then Project 3 is the expansion from Beardsley to the Butler area, and that project is planned for fiscal year 27 and 28. So this is part of the overall plan to get that transmission main throughout Peoria to move water wherever it's needed most, depending on our future. So let's talk more specifically about this first project. It's a 7.6-mile project that takes us from Beardsley to Paloma. The improvements at Beardsley are being done under a separate contract with the Beardsley Water Reclamation Facility expansion. We are working closely with them for the tie-in location for the transmission main. This project, while it's project one, we're separating it into 4 different segments. That's because it's 7.6 miles of pipeline, and we feel we can deliver it best by having separate projects with separate contractors so they can be done at different times utilizing different resources. Segment 4, which is the blue segment, we are still determining the right alignment. The other segments you will see, we try to stay off of Lake Pleasant in the busiest areas to minimize the impact to traffic. But segment 4, we're still working on that alignment, and I'll talk about it a little more later. As we do this first segment, we work closely with Parks and Rec and with the Water Department to figure out potential users in the area. So we're looking at areas where there is a lot of vegetation, there's a lot of grassy areas. We're looking at right-of-way landscaping opportunities. Some of those will be connected into this main transmission line, but we don't like to have too many direct connections to a transmission line. It's mainly to get the water to the smaller distribution pipes. So we will be planning those locations for the distribution system along the way. You'll notice it's a lot of parks and schools, as there are a lot of turf areas. We'll also be looking at HOA turf areas as well. The current contract. So GHD actually went through the process through materials management for the design contract, and we had them under contract for the very first phase by December. That was because we needed to get moving before we came to see you. The first phase on Beardsley up 111th Avenue is adjacent to a development project for an RV storage site, and we're trying to work closely together with them to minimize the impacts to the neighborhood. We also need to start working with the Beardsley group to try to determine that tie-in point. The other things we were looking at was the pipe material. Did we want to use DIP? Do we want to use, which is ductile iron pipe, or a PVC, a plastic pipe? For a 24-inch main, it's always good to check in what our requirements are, what other people in the valley are doing, what's the price points. So we're preparing a matrix to figure out the right material to use. We're also looking at that segment 4 and trying to figure out what is the right alignment for that. Different opportunities, different challenges, going up Testmer versus going 109th Avenue. So we're looking at that as well. And we're also looking at the existing reclaimed water line that was put in to service Ventana Lakes. That was put in years ago, and since that time, regulations have changed. So we have to look at the spacing in the pipes, and we also have to look at the condition of the pipe. So that's what they were hired to do with this first section of the contract. Tonight we are here for the amendment to the contract. Because it was such a large project, we went forward with that first part for segment 1, but we needed to come back tonight to get your approval to move forward with the rest of the project. So that's the design of segment 2, 3, and 4, which will all be the separate construction packages. So, and the additional design services for segment 1, once we worked with the Beardsley Water Reclamation Facility, we found out we had to extend the pipe a little further than we planned. This is why coordination is important, because we don't want to have a gap in the system, because then the system won't work. So we always have to work closely with our partners. And then construction administration services. As a project goes from design to construction, we're always working with the designer to address questions from the contractor and to look at change orders that come up as the projects are built. Coordination. Well, you've seen where we're covering a lot of area with these different pipelines. So with that, there will be a lot of coordination. That includes the other city departments and also utility companies. If we're going to go into the road, who do we need to ask if they need to go in the road at the same time? Obviously, the other utility companies. We're working with the Beardsley team, as I talked about, and then the opportunity projects, so parks, schools, HOAs. The RV storage site developer I mentioned, the adjacent neighborhoods will have to be involved, especially when we get to construction. And then we have to talk to our partners at State Land and McDOT for any other projects that are underway. The one we mentioned is the Deer Valley project that will be impacting at 109th and Deer Valley, which is one of our route possibilities for that segment 4. Project schedule. As I said, for segment 1, we started that design. It should be complete by this summer. It will go straight to construction, and that should be complete this winter. The amendment that we're doing tonight, that's for the design for 2, 3, and 4. That section will be complete in fall of '21. Those individual design packages will then go out to different contractors to be constructed. They all have different issues that we need to address. Some may have right-of-way or easement issues that could delay them. Some could be in a hard dig area. So we've estimated that all of it will be complete by spring of 2023. We will be coming back to award those contracts to council based on the size of the construction. I don't know if you have any questions. We're here tonight for awarding the contract amendment to GHD in the amount of $1,129,532 to provide the engineering, design, and construction admin services for Project 1 of the Reclaimed Water Master Plan implementation.
Thank you. Council, any comments or questions? Councilmember Binsbacher?
Thank you, Mayor. This is really exciting. I know it's water, but we had talked about earlier, Councilmember Dunn brought it up, about reclaimed water and how important it is. This is a lot of money, but it is so worth it and such an investment in a sustainable city, in the future of our city, and I completely support this project. We don't want to break in the project. And quick story, way back when, back in 2014, when I was running for council, and most everyone in the room, and maybe some at home, know, or maybe you don't, that the district belonged to Mayor Carlett before it was mine. And I remember driving around the district with her, talking about, you know, all of the years that she had put into it, and the constituents and everything, and talking about priorities at that time. And at the top of her list was reclaimed water to the northern part of our city. And my first thought was, yay. What does that really mean? Well, you know, years later, fast forward, I realize how critical that is to the future of our city. And I'm just really proud of all of the work and the commitment to this and everything that's gone into getting us to this point. So, thank you.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion, yes, to award the contract amendment.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. And before we vote, I would just like to say it absolutely is critical to the future of our city. It is us planning for the next generation and the next generation. And it's these kinds of projects that are going to make our growth easy to handle. We can continue to grow and take care of that infrastructure and make sure everyone has the supplies they need while we are still maintaining the existing sections of our city. So it's this kind of thing that allows us to move forward in a really organized way. So I'm so happy to see this moving forward. And with that, council, please vote. And it passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What a great way to end our agenda. So the next item on the agenda is called to the public for non-agenda items. Have we received any speaker request forms? We have not. And so we will now move on to reports from our city manager. Mr. Tyne?
Thank you. Just some very brief comments tonight. And as we hopefully reemerge from the effects of the COVID-19 event, I thought it probably is important to talk a little bit about how, again, the city has applied its AZ CARES funding and how it's being applied and used here. And then for the audience tonight, make sure that they know a reference should they request additional assistance. So for example, on that, one of the areas that the council saw fit to utilize the AZ CARES money to the Peoria CARES funds, and that was in rental, mortgage, and utility assistance. And that program has been very effective. We have already received or offered assistance to 307 households in the form of rent and mortgage assistance. Just as a reminder, and for those residents that are interested, this is up to $1,500 a month for 3 months that would be provided. In addition, 275 households have received utilities assistance. This is up to $500 a month. Should there be residents that are interested in utilizing this program, we encourage you to reach us at 623-979-3911, extension 405. Don't worry, we'll give you some other references if you need that as well. Of course, our library has also provided technology assistance, especially for those in need, including low-income residents and those students at our different school districts, and that comes in the form of 50 Wi-Fi hotspots, as well as the use of laptops. So I should take it back. We have 350 hotspots, 50 laptops that are available. There are some still available now, so we do encourage you to use that if at all it is something that is needed. Our fire and medical crews, of course, continue to assist through the community paramedicine program investment that the council saw fit. That community paramedicine program offers unique attention for those residents requiring additional assistance that can't necessarily travel to urgent care. Think of things, for example, discharged hospital patients that need assistance. If there is assistance that's needed there, we encourage you to reach any of our main information lines, or you can reach our Peoria Fire Medical Department directly. What's next? Some items that we expect coming. We do have the COVID relief bill that is a federal legislation that is being considered right now by the U.S. Congress. The early information that we receive is that there might be additional relief that is provided to us. That really will be a time that we will want to re-engage the City Council. What is now the need for our businesses and residents at this point in time? And it might be something that is different. So we look forward to conversations should indeed there be any other additional relief that reaches us. Again, the website that any of you can use for any of this information would be at www.peoriaaz.gov/COVID-19. So thank you for the time. Just wanted to provide a brief update to that.
That is a really great update, and it's such a positive aspect of a really tough time that we have been through, that we've been able to pass those COVID funds, or the CARES Act funding, directly through to our residents and our businesses. So thank you for all of that, and I just love the fact that you give out a phone number with an extension. You can actually call that number and get a human being on the phone who wants to talk to you about giving you some relief.
Can you repeat that first phone number?
Could you repeat the phone number, please?
For rental, mortgage, and utility assistance, we encourage you to reach us at 623-979-3911, extension 405.
Everyone get that? And call someone will answer the phone and talk to you. It's great. Okay, we will now move on to reports from our Youth Council liaisons, and we will start with Mr. Van Winkle.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The City of Peoria's Youth Advisory Board recruitment project, which was added to our Youth Master Plan a while ago as a goal from Liaison Tuari and I, is making great strides with a finalized script coming and a date for filming an informational video that has been set. So we're definitely going to be working on that this month. Mid this month, we should be able to get that video filmed and be able to promote our board and continue recruiting new members, once again to increase our diversity, our strength, and so on. And Youth Government Day will be virtual. The decision has been made today. So for more updates, those will come soon. Stay tuned to the Peoria Youth Advisory Board social medias. We have taken it upon ourselves to advertise for Youth Government Day, so updates that come, we'll be posting at Peoria AZ Teens on both Twitter and Instagram. So stay tuned to those, and if you are not following those, we suggest it for frequent updates and for other things that would be relevant to the City of Peoria. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you were speaking for both of you this evening. Youth Council Liaison Tuari was on the phone. Is she still there? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Would you like to make some comments?
Yes, please.
Please go ahead.
So, Mayor and Council, this past week, the Youth Advisory Board, along with one of our nonprofit partners, Bloom 365, supported a public exhibition called the Silent Witness Initiative, and I would like to mention that all COVID protocols were vigorously followed during this exhibition. But it was a week-long exhibit that honored the lives of teens that lost their lives due to teen dating violence, and it was a really touching and just amazing experience. And there are photos up on our social media that you can take a look at if you were unable to come to the event. But Dom covered the most of it, and that's all I have for today.
All right, both doing great work. Thanks for all that you do. And there being no further business, we are adjourned.